So, welcome back to Pon's Tinkering Garage, and it's a tailor's approach to cloth sewing in Blender revisit. You see, it's been a while since the first time I published my very first series, which is a tailor's approach to cloth sewing in Blender, and yeah, I guess it's a good time for me right now to kind of renew it with a new subject. However, with this revisit version, I'm gonna bring a change of format. You see, the original version, like it's the official course where everything has to be perfect, because that is like the course that I'm gonna refer back and forth in the future to explain all the things that I do later. However, in this version, the revisit version, I'm gonna use more of a live stream style where it's gonna be a little bit more chill and relaxed. So yeah, in this revisit version, I'm gonna use it just like one take from start to finish, unscripted. However, I'm gonna still use a cue card here, and yeah, that's gonna be the format. And yeah, you see, since the first time it's published, it has caught up a little bit of viewership, and I've also read the comments, and the most common comments on the original version is that it's a little bit too long. So because like it's like probably 6 to 7 hours course, so I can see where it's coming from. So with this revisit version, I'm gonna release like two format version. The first is gonna be the long version, and the other is gonna be the short version. So the long version, it's gonna be more like chill and relax, because it's you practically see me doing things in real time, and you can, if you want that, you can do the same thing like I'm doing, but just following along stuff in real time as well. Meanwhile, the short version is for those of you who know what you're doing. So it's kind of best of both worlds. So, however, if you're watching the short version and it's kind of too fast, well, I have to recommend that just watch the long version. And if there are many bits and pieces that you watch and you don't understand them, just go to the original version, and I'm gonna refer back and forth in the videos which part is gonna be like probably problematic and a little bit not very clear, and I'm gonna refer it back to the original version where I'm explaining every bits and pieces. The reason being, even though that I'm not gonna explain too much in this revisit version, but in here I'm gonna use techniques that are exactly the same with the original version. Okay, that's talking about the change of format, and right now let's talk about subject. You see, if you remember that in the original version, I chose the shirt as the subject, and the reason being because shirt is like one of the most common piece of clothing. So it's kind of a good thing to start with, something that kind of universal. However, once in a while, it's kind of a good to kind of a return to kind of a like more traditional or cultural piece of clothing. And the thing is, I always want to do this because it's kind of, because it's kind of, there's a lot of clothing out there that are not very common, but it's kind of beautiful. So I always wanted to do this, but and it so happens that I've got a request that kind of coincides with what I want. You see, the revisit version, the subject for the revisit version is actually a request from one of the users over Discord. So, and the requested subject for the revisit version is what they call as outside. You see, it's a Vietnamese clothing. So, as you can see, it's beautiful. It's not shirt. However, it's still, well, for me, I think this is more beautiful than shirt, even though you're not gonna see it as often. But for me, it's a much more interesting thing to see. And if you notice that to kill two birds with one stone, in this revisit version, we're gonna do two pieces of clothing. First is the outside itself, which is the dress, and also the trousers. So yeah, it's the one thing. So we've kind of talked about the tops, right? The shirts and the dress. Right now, it's a good time to introduce, the bottom part. And yeah, I think it's the trousers is kind of a good place to start. And yeah, so let's bring back the outside. And some of you may have pointed out that, well, I think I feel like I've seen it somewhere before. Well, if you like playing games, the biggest chance that you've seen it is from Chun-Li, from Street Fighter. You see, yeah, they look kind of similar, right? I mean, like, they have the tops. You got that collar thing, and then you got this flaps at the bottom. However, this one is much shorter than that. So yes. However, if you open the documentation, it's actually Chun-Li is actually wearing a qipao or a cheongsam. And well, yeah. So Chun-Li dress is actually qipao-ish. Well, the reason why it's ish because you see, qipao and outside is actually visually similar. So it's not very wrong of you to think that, well, they are similar because, well, if you open a Wikipedia for like a qipao or cheongsam, you would notice that even Wikipedia said that, well, outside was coming from a similar imperial Chinese culture. So, well, it's not too big of a leap that we believe that we think that they look similar because, well, guess what? They come from a similar culture. However, you gotta see all the historical difference and all that, and how one developed into one and the other. So, yes. So let's go back to Chun-Li. So Chun-Li's dress. Let's bring it over to Photoshop, and this is Chun-Li. The thing why I call Chun-Li's dress is kind of a, like qipao-ish, because if you notice that, sorry, the difference between qipao and outside is actually, as far as I can see, there's gonna be like two big difference. The first is this one, the collar opening. You see the neckline, because if you see that the qipao has that, straight from the middle of the collar, and they go straight over the breast and down to the side of the dress, right? Meanwhile, outside, if you look closer, that from the middle of the collar, they kind of peak to the top a little before they go down over the breast to the side. So this one goes straight down, and the outside go up and then go down. That's the first difference, and the second difference is actually this thing, the side cut. You see, you've got the outside has this very risque waist high cuts, right? The cut starts at just a little bit above the waist, and they kind of reveal a little bit of a bit of skin over the trousers. Meanwhile, a qipao is kind of a bit more modest in that sense because, well, they kind of start, the side cut starts at somewhere mid thigh. So yeah, it's a little bit more modest. So if you go back to Chun-Li, well, as you can see, the top, the top half, they look like a qipao, right? Meanwhile, the bottom half, right, the flaps, this starts just above the waist. You see, of course, she uses this kind of a waistband, so you're not gonna see it clearly, but this is somewhere around the waist, and it's very, very high side cut, and it's very much risque, and it's very much a characteristic of outside. So yeah, Chun-Li is a little bit of both actually. The top half is like a qipao, but the bottom half is very much outside. And yeah, so yes, that's Chun-Li for you. We got a bit of sidetrack talking about Chun-Li. So now, well, it's a bit of fun anyway. So yeah, now let's go to Blender. Now